Hey guys, this is my thoughts and prediction for the Julius Indongo versus Terence Crawford fight, or Terence Crawford versus Indongo, however you want to say it. I did some breakdown videos of their last fights, of Crawford fighting Felix Diaz. We're going to do another round of that. I was very impressed with Crawford in this fight. I think that he's improved a lot since the Gamboa fight. But I also did some breakdown of the Julius Indongo versus Ricky Burns and his types of offense. And after I do another round of the Crawford fight, I'm going to do round 5. We're going to talk about possible defensive things that he might be exploitable for Indongo. And we're going to talk about the ways that Crawford sets his offense up, how that's going to play against Indongo, and what kind of success he's likely to have against Indongo's defense, and also any opportunities Indongo might have to combat against his offense. But for those of you that are new to the channel, whenever major fights, the recent fights that are going to be coming up, I'll do like a keys to victory. Usually, I didn't do one for this fight. I don't see very many keys to victory, to be honest, for Indongo. But we're going to do this round and see if there's anything else that, can kind of be exploited. And I'll give my prediction for the fight. So let's go ahead and get into round 5. All right. So Crawford coming out, very smart, And one thing I want to talk about real quick is look how active his guard is, right? Like a lot of fighters, like if you're new to fighting and stuff, your coach tells you to keep your hands up and this and that, and people get kind of stuck in their guard, and it stops them from being able to be smooth and to transition, to move their weight, right? And Crawford doesn't have any of those problems. He's able to move his hands really freely, roam around, kind of probing with that jab, like even simple stuff like how he sticks his glove out like that, right? Controlling the distance between them, right? With his glove, like when he has control of the ring, and that's what he has right there, is he has control of the distance between the two fighters. That makes it so that Diaz has to fight around that lead hand, right? So all of his offense has to be has to circumvent that area, right? He cannot move his body or his punches into that area, so it all has to be fighting around it. And it just limits the amount of offense that can come back at him. Also, he's able to gauge what his opponent is going to do in response to seeing that hand, right? And when he starts seeing that he's not going to do anything, it allows him to easily open up with other jabs or other punches. Good jab from Crawford. Normally I like probing and feinting before you start committing to offense, but if you watch the first few rounds, you get to see that Crawford has already put in the work for his feints and his probes, right? And lots of times where he would just be flashing his jab, and now it's paying dividends in these late rounds, because while Felix Diaz was trying to take away Crawford's jab early in the fight, there were a lot of times where this probe was just a fake punch, and he was only doing it to elicit a reaction from Diaz so that he could counter it, right? And that's what you call a probe. And when he wasn't biting on the probe, it allowed Crawford to just throw punches at him, because he would shell up much like this, right? How he has his guard up like that. He can't really throw punches back when he's defending himself in that manner. So good work from Crawford. I was really impressed with him after seeing this fight. And Diaz, not really having any reasonable success with his offense there, right? Comes in with the body shot that he's telegraphed before, and while it's really interesting because this is something that's often overlooked as a defensive measure, right? Like a lot of people see like Floyd Mayweather's fantastic defense, right? And they're talking about the Philly shell defense, right? Not like, and that's a dangerous defense, right? Marcos Maidana was able to catch Mayweather with a good shot, that hurt him, or at least would hurt someone else, But this kind of defense is just so much more underrated. And notice how. So what I want to talk about is right as soon as Diaz starts committing to offense, right? He might land that body shot. Crawford turns away from that hook, right? And then after he turns away from it, he's able to pivot because he changes all of his weight, right? The way that his hips are distributed from here, right? See how he turns in on this hook, right? He turns to the inside, then he turns in on that hook too, and then that allows him to pivot out this way and get away from the other punches that he's setting up, right? Notice how he threw 3 punches, boom, boom, and then that third one was just completely wide because Crawford had already moved off of the line, right? And on the line is where you're throwing your punches, and Crawford was already not there. Just a brilliant defense right there. Even if he had gotten hit with those first 2 punches, right? The fact that he's able to move off of the line and get away from that third punch just shows brilliant defense. And that's where it all stems from. And that's one thing that I've really come to admire about Crawford is, his boxing stance. Oh, beautiful. Following that jab back and able to catch him with the shot. Very pull counter-esque, right? But not like how Mayweather does it, where he's really baiting the pull counter, where he sticks his chin all out there. But Crawford able to do it in a very smart and a very good manner. And I wonder, if he's trying to do this against Indongo, because Indongo doesn't really use his lead hand to throw punches, right? He'll flash it, and then he'll throw a left hand straight off. So I don't think that Crawford will be using that technique against Indongo. I think, we'll talk about what I think Indongo is going to do, or how I think the fight's going to go after this round. But again, catching the shot, right, and continuing to move back, and then ties him up after. Great defense from Crawford. And even though it's not the most pretty in that situation, the fact that he's not getting hit with shots is the most important part. Oh my God, beautiful, fucking beautiful. So he throws his uppercut. Oh man, tries to walk him into that shot. Look how he turns his hips, and then he's able to control him and then shoot off to the side. He kind of gets tagged with that right hook a little bit. I guess it's not really even a punch. It's kind of arm punching. And look at, because he moves this way and he's off the line, there's literally no power in that shot anyway, right? And that's what being off the line does for you. Again, beautiful boxing from Crawford, right? Boom. And off of the transfer of his hips, he's able to shoot out to the side, which is actually, it's not very easy to do. When you turn your hips that way, usually you would control your opponent with your other hand and pivot out the other side, right? But showing that he's a phenomenal athlete, and he's able to get out of there through the other side, I guess right there he kind of telegraphed his pull counter, very much like Mayweather, and then just went for the left hand right there instead. But I think he was baiting it right there. Brilliant. And look at how dips down to his right, to his left, then dips down to his right, and then shuffles forward and puts his weight back on his left leg. Just brilliant balance. And that's when I do my video. I'll be putting up a training video talking about boxing technique and stuff. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about during the course of it. And beautiful. Look at how Crawford has taken away Diaz's jab, right? Crawford had maintained so much control in the middle of the ring, and because of the pull counter that he used earlier, Crawford has able to nullify Diaz's jab. And Diaz, he's not even feinting with it. He doesn't want to get countered. And he winds up just putting himself completely out of position with wide winging punches like this, like an amateur. And that's what happens when you're able to take away your opponent's tools. Now, ironically, if you think about it from the first start of the round, the start of the first round, Diaz was trying to do the exact thing to Crawford by taking away his jab, right? But if you noticed, Diaz's jab was not nearly as educated as Crawford's. Diaz's jab was, he had one feint, right? He would feint and then throw a shot, and then he would actually throw his jab, right? And Crawford has been able to counter and take away both of those jabs by making them ineffective. Whereas Crawford's jab, because he was using the probes, he was just sticking it out into Diaz's face and waiting for a reaction so that he could counter him. He was able to stop the effectiveness of Diaz's counters, because Diaz, like I said earlier, Diaz didn't know when a real jab was coming or when a feint jab was coming, or a probe, right? Something to get Diaz to react first so he could counter him, or test the waters, right? So he could stick it out there, see that Diaz was trying to counter him, and then just take a step back, counter him with a hook, or just take a step back and change angles or do whatever. And because of that, Diaz hasn't had nearly the same success that Crawford has at taking away his opponent's jab, because Crawford has used his jab much more intelligently and in much different ways, right? And don't think about it as just a jab. For those of you that are new to my channel, think about it as your lead hand, right? Your hands are tools to fight with, right? You're not always just throwing punches with them. Shoots that shot, rocks back, controls his arm, gets his glove up. That's beautiful. See how now this is beautiful boxing right here. Look at how he sticks his glove out, right? He has one hand on his opponent, right, trying to control him, and then the other one is covering his head, right? And he's able to turn him and change angles and get out of where he was in position, or out of position. So notice what happens, right? He shoots this shot. Diaz is able to get under it, and he's coming back with counters. Now, Crawford, because he went first, right? Boxing theory, your opponent out of position, right? That's when you want to throw punches at your opponent, is when they're out of position. When your opponent throws punches, they're out of position. So Diaz gets Crawford to gets Crawford to go first because he's cutting the ring off on him, right? So Crawford goes first to control him. And because Crawford is out of position now, he has to figure out a way to control his opponent to stop him from landing offense. So he controls his right arm, gets his glove up as he's turning, controls him with his left arm, and then turns him and gets back into position to not only defend himself, but to offend his opponent. Beautiful boxing. That is like 100% textbook, exactly what you need to be doing. Changing angles on him. Oh my God, fucking beautiful. Beats him to the line and then walks him into a shot and then moves off the line. So like what he's doing right here, this is just beautiful, right? Oh God. So gives him a feint right here, gets Diaz to react, and instead of throwing a punch at him after he gets him to react, he uses that, his opponent putting himself out of position, right, by trying to catch the shot or whatever, to just take a walk, right? Walk here, now beats him to the line and shoots over this way. Just beautiful boxing, and then gets him to walk right into a shot as he walks on the line. Just beautiful. Beautiful boxing. And that's like crafty, clever stuff, right? You're not going to get away with that stuff all the time. Those are like little tricks. But beautiful to watch nonetheless. All right, so 30 more seconds. Ooh. I like the feints that were coming from Crawford, but he doesn't really do anything with them. And kind of gets stuck there. I'm not exactly sure. I guess he tries to counter the jab. But again, doesn't take any real return fire. Ooh. Did he try to land the right uppercut? I couldn't even tell right there. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not even sure what the fuck happens right here. I guess he does try to bait him into the right uppercut. I wonder if that's what he was trying to do a few seconds ago. No, it didn't look very similar in that regard. But anyway. So, my prediction for the fight, I don't think it's going to be close. I don't think it's going to be a close fight at all. I think Crawford's going to beat the crap out of Indongo. I don't know how durable Indongo is. I didn't get to watch the whole Ricky Burns fight. So I don't know if Ricky Burns ever lands even a punch. Fucking beautiful, man. But I do think that Crawford's going to beat the crap out of Indongo. I think that the control that Crawford is going to have over the center of the ring with his lead hand is going to stop Indongo from being as active, right? I think it's going to be a much slower pace, because I don't think Indongo's ever seen anybody use their lead hand in quite the way that Crawford does. And let's see, just so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about a little bit. It's in the first round, a lot of it. Crawford uses his lead hand. See how he's just prodding with it, trying to touch him, right? Just like that, controlling him. Exactly how he does this, steps around him. Those aren't real punches. And then when he sees that his opponent's not really reacting and he gets off the line, he's able to wing a right hand or a left hand around the guard. But again, see, just like this, probing, and he's able to, when Diaz shoots that jab at him, he's able to easily take a step back in the middle of his own quote-unquote punch, right? This is why jabs, not all jabs are punches, right? That's not a real punch that he's throwing, that's a probe. And what he's trying to do is gauge Diaz's reactions to it, so he can figure out ways to safely set up his offense without getting countered. The epitome of high-level chess. So anyway, I think that is going to basically be the story of the fight. I think that, Indongo doesn't really use his right hand, his lead hand, very well. Have I been saying left hand? I'm not sure. It is interesting because I don't actually know how Indongo is going to fight a left-handed fighter. He's a southpaw himself, but I don't know how he's going to fight a fellow southpaw. And if Crawford comes out fighting him like a southpaw, obviously I would have needed to do some better film study for that. But I don't think that, like, even when Ricky Burns would flash his lead hand, it would get Indongo to kind of shell up, and Ricky Burns was able to land the same exact kind of offense against Indongo that Indongo was using against Ricky Burns. So it's really interesting that Indongo doesn't understand, like, while he's fighting, the types of offenses that he uses and how to counter them even when they're being used against him, right? So, like, thinking about that, like, philosophically, he can tell that Ricky Burns is not trying to land those jabs against him, and he's only flashing the jab to set up the straight right hand to the body or to the head. But that's exactly what he was doing. And the fact that he couldn't figure out a way to take advantage of Ricky Burns using the same exact strategy shows, like, kind of a lack of boxing knowledge or understanding from Indongo's part. Not to say that he's not a good fighter, right? But it just shows, like, he's, and he could have gotten better, for sure. He could have gotten better since. Maybe he's watching film study on Terence Crawford to figure out how to beat that jab or whatever. But I just kind of think that Crawford is going to be able to use his probing lead hand to set up lots of offense, very similar to how he does against Diaz in the first few rounds. And then after he's, sufficiently taken away Indongo's lead hand, and we'll see, like, how much countering he does, right? I'm not sure exactly if Crawford is going to be taking advantage of Indongo's lead hand, right? Flashing it out there and then throwing a left hand to the body. I'm not sure if Crawford is going to be looking to counter that left hand, or if he's just going to move back, or, like, create angles and move off the line so that he's not able to even mount any offense. So we'll have to see. But one thing that I do think Crawford is going to be able to take advantage of, I think it was at the end of this round. I think it's right here. Oh, yeah, beautiful. One thing I do think Crawford is going to be able to take advantage of and really make Indongo pay for is the in and out fighting. So right here in this scene, you see Diaz step in with his jab, and then you see Crawford slip it right on the outside, and he's able to time that stepping jab that Diaz shoots right here right? So steps, and then Crawford is able to make him just barely miss and then come over the top with the left hand of his own. And I think that might wind up being the story of the fight. And I'm not sure if Indongo is going to be able to fight without his rhythm. And I think that fighting on his rhythm is going to prevent a huge problem for him. As Crawford is like, look at his footwork after, right? He's able to slide under it, boom, and then just take a step back, really easily able to get in and out on his own. And I think that their particular styles, while Indongo's a good fighter, Crawford, I don't know that it's like something that I don't think Indongo's showing Crawford something he's never seen before, and when I learned to fight with an in and out style. It wasn't super popular in the amateurs when I would spar people. Now this might be the only time in which I think Julius Indongo has an opportunity to land punches against Crawford. Sometimes, right? So see how in this round, he doesn't have his hand up after he throws that punch, right? Diaz is cutting the ring off. Bless me. He gets kind of lackadaisical, and he's not controlling Diaz like he does in the 5th round, right? So we see that Crawford clearly has the skills to control his opponent and move along the ropes and do all that fancy shit, right? But sometimes he gets a little careless with these tactics. That's one thing that he does against Diaz in this fight, where he stops controlling him with his lead hand as much, and I think it was only so that he could counter him more often. But also in instances like that where he's not controlling him, where he's traversing the ring. Anyway, other opportunities for Indongo to land punches, I don't really think there are any, to be honest. I didn't see the whole Ricky Burns-Indongo fight, but after 4 rounds, Indongo's only real offense was flashing the lead hand and then throwing a body shot with the left hand, or throwing a wide shot with the left hand. And another interesting wrinkle, actually, another thing that really impressed me about Indongo was once Ricky Burns started slipping his punches and punching with him, Indongo in a few spots started throwing punches to where Ricky Burns would slip to. Rather than throwing them at his chin, he would throw it to where he would slip the punch and put his head. And he did land a really good shot against him. And that is something that he might be able to do to Crawford, to land a couple of shots. But I only think that that'll be the case if Indongo, or if Crawford is, gets lackadaisical, and stops controlling him with his lead hand. The only way that I think Indongo has a way to get into this fight is if Crawford lets him. If Crawford starts baiting him into throwing more punches so he can counter him, I think that might be an opportunity for Indongo to land a hard shot. Now, I don't think that Indongo is a bigger puncher than Gamboa, and Gamboa couldn't put Terence Crawford out of there. And Gamboa landed some fucking big shots, I do think that they fought at 140, right? I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. I don't think Indongo's as big of a puncher as Gamboa, and Gamboa couldn't do it. So, my prediction is Terence Crawford by fucking ass beating. I think that it's not even going to be close, and I think Terence Crawford is going to get it. I'm not sure if he's going to stop Indongo. Indongo has a lot of energy, and he's really big. I think that he might be able to get away from Terence Crawford if he wants to, just moving away and using his reach to keep him off of him if he gets hurt. But yeah, Terence Crawford by ass beating. And sorry I haven't been uploading the last couple days. I've been trying to start school, and I've had a lot of really strange issues with the school districts and other things like that have been kind of jamming me up. So my priorities have been a little shifted toward going back to school. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Let me know who you're rooting for. Let me know if there are any Indongo fans in the house, and why you might think that he might be able to give Crawford some trouble. And yeah, let me know, guys. Thank you.